Seru, asik. Seru is like exciting and asik is fun. People like to have a good time.
Meet Rob. He moved from New York to Indonesia 5 years ago. Here he learned to speak Indonesian and built a popular YouTube channel. Rob shared what most foreigners in Indonesia don't understand about locals, whether it's a safe place to travel, and a totally different way friends communicate in America versus Indonesia. I'm Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. Ayo!
Pas aku datang di Indonesia, aku jatuh cinta sama Indonesia karena orangnya paling ramah. They're the nicest people I've ever met in the world. Terus makanan enak banget. If you like Indonesian food, ada rendang, nasi padang, makanan dari Jawa gitu. There's so many good foods, and but for sure, it's the people that make Indonesia the best.
No, for sure. I think Indonesia is one of the most, like, the nicest people I've actually met. Like, I'm generalizing, but they always very chill, smiley. They're friendly, like genuinely friendly. Feels like it's not like a smile, but it's like they mean it actually.
Yeah, and I will say that sometimes there's this misconception that people will say, oh, Indonesians are only friendly to you because you're a foreigner or because you're a bule. Bule is the term for a foreigner in Indonesia, or because you're white or so forth. So I will say for sure, if you're a foreigner, especially traveling in remote places, you probably get more attention, and maybe the people are a little bit nicer to you just due to you being an outsider. But I do strongly think that Indonesians are also friendly amongst each other. It's not just because you're a foreigner. I've been in many situations where Indonesians are very cordial with each other. They're so open and personable, and it's not just, they're friendly amongst each other too. It's not only with foreigners. I think it's just the general kind of feel and vibe amongst the people and within the culture.
What would be the main misconceptions about Indonesia for foreigners?
One good way to look at this is some things that I've learned being in Indonesia for this long, or you could kind of say backwards or opposite as the way we would interpret it. So one thing that people always talk about, especially Indonesians love to talk about this and foreigners talk about this too, is when Indonesians often ask very direct questions. I'm sure you maybe heard this in conversation. So one way I look at this is sometimes foreigners interpret that as being a bit rude and intrusive, because a lot of times, maybe in the West, for instance, you don't ask questions like that. I mean, in some places you don't ever talk about work, or especially how much you make, or if you're married or why you're not married. Maybe a person would interpret the Indonesian as being rude and intrusive, but it's funny because in Indonesia, it's almost the reverse. And if you don't, and Indonesia's asking these questions because this is just common for them, and if you don't engage in these questions, then they might think that you're being rude. And they have a word, it's sombong. It kind of means you're a bit entitled, is the best way I can describe it. And they'd say oh, this person, they're sombong, they don't want to engage with me, they don't want to answer these questions. Even as far as, I guess some situations I've been in so these types of direct questions, even as far as just meeting someone and they ask you, meet an Indonesian and they'll ask you for your Instagram right away and to follow them back. And I've even been asked for my WhatsApp number within a 2-minute conversation. And I am maybe a bit apprehensive to giving someone I just met my WhatsApp number. So maybe I feel, oh, this person's being a bit intrusive. Maybe it's kind of rude to ask that. But in their eyes, it's, oh, well, if he doesn't give me his WhatsApp number, he's being rude to me. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect there, and maybe, a misconception. I've traveled Sumatra extensively, Java. I live in Bali. I've been to the islands to the east, Lombok, Sumbawa, and Flores. So I've been not all the islands, but 6 of the major islands. I've done quite a bit of traveling. The most open and direct people, which is commonly known in Indonesia, are the people in Sumatra, specifically North Sumatra and West Sumatra provinces, more so North Sumatra, not far from Singapore. And in North Sumatra, the ethnic group is Batak, they're Batak. And we had an interaction actually with an older woman, a Batak Ibu for Indonesian terms. And we actually had this on camera when I was making content. But we were at a market, we had just met her. And within 3 questions, her first question was, where are you from? We were in Lake Toba in North Sumatra. Okay, you're visiting Lake Toba, what hotel are you staying at? And then the third question, I was with my friend, she asked him, do you want to marry my daughter? we have it on video. So you get a lot of just strong personalities like that, and people that can be very, very direct. Indonesia is a very loud place. The people talk and it can be very loud. There's a lot of loud motorbikes. And I think in Indonesia, Indonesians aren't necessarily bothered by this. So I don't think they're bothered by it. They're not inconvenienced by loud noises, for instance. Whether they don't want to whether they maybe feel weird about calling someone out for being loud. An example would be, you could be in a cafe and an Indonesian would be blasting TikTok on their phone or like playing a mobile game super loud, or a lot of times blasting music. I've been in a lot of situations in a remote village where I'm at someone's house and they have young children at school the next day and they're blasting music and we're just hanging out and it's totally okay. Like, it's not rude, it's not disrespectful. Or you take a ferry, an overnight ferry, and people are trying to sleep and there's bapas, which is like older men in Indonesia, playing dominoes and slamming the dominoes on the table, being so loud, but this is okay. But maybe from like a Western perspective, you being loud is often being rude. So in Bali, a lot of times, because there's a lot of development here and construction workers are blasting music and maybe it's nearby a neighborhood and foreigners get really upset and, oh, they're being so rude, they're being so inconsiderate, but in their eyes, this is not rude or inconsiderate, right? Yeah. So it's some of these things that are, it's almost completely backwards, the mindset on them. So I think those would be like two common kind of misconceptions along the lines of what's rude or what's impolite or what's intrusive.
Have you ever felt unsafe in Indonesia at all?
Not many times where I felt unsafe. There's a couple areas where it's known to be a bit more dangerous. The most infamous one I'd say is in the southern part of Sumatra. So I did travel there and we were told not to travel at night because sometimes you encounter people that will rob you, whether you're driving a bike by bike or by car. So yeah, we never dealt with that, but I'm sure it exists. And then anywhere else I've been in Indonesia, except Bali is the only place I'd say there's a little bit of you have to be wary of a bit of the crime. So I think as with any tourist destination, there's some low-level crime here where people steal your phone if you're on your motorbike, sometimes pickpocket you. So it's not very dangerous, but I would say honestly, Bali is the place where is the only place where I've been where I had to be really mindful of my stuff.
So about the small like towns far away of civilization, you travel?
You don't really like no worries at all. And obviously I think there's a bit of, because you're a foreigner, obviously it's a bit easier, but even if you're a local, just the remote villages in the countryside, the people are so nice. There's hardly any crime. You can just pull up to someone's house, say hello, and they welcome you in with a coffee, and it's really not an issue whatsoever.
Are Indonesians chill, calm, and not very confrontational? So they're like, I'm generalizing, but this the personality of typical Indonesian.
Yeah, initially, as long as you don't disrespect the culture and the religion, the people. I think that is really the only situation where you would see someone be confrontational. And of course, you see so many videos of this on social media in Bali with someone being disrespectful, even, maybe in a temple in Bali, to a sacred physical place, or even on the road. If you drive in a motorbike and cut someone off or disrespect a local, people can become confrontational. But that's really the only time I would see. Otherwise, Indonesians are, again, very loose, very relaxed, are fairly unbothered by many, many things. And unless you disrespect the people and the culture and religion.
Can you describe like Indonesian person in Bahasa Indonesian in a few words?
Like using adjectives or like, Indonesian people? Like,
Indonesian people, yeah.
Yeah. Dulu mereka ramah banget. So ramah means they're kind. So that's the first thing you kind of know. Mereka tertarik, which means like interested. I feel Indonesians might correct me on some of my words, but they're very interested in foreigners. So I think that's another thing they have to live with. I think this is more of a slang word, but like terbuka means more open and like a personality and personable. So it's harder, you put me on the spot. Yeah, ramah friendly, you could say using seru, asik seru is like exciting and asik is fun. People like to have a good time and can be loosey-goosey, maybe singing some karaoke and like to conversate and have a good time. So you can maybe describe people in that way. If you're in the countryside, like hidup yang sederhana, it's a simple life and people don't need much. When you understand what's important to Indonesians, you will understand what's lower on the priority list, right? So things that are important to Indonesians. So I would say religion is extremely important. So all the major religions are here. The country's 80 to 90% Muslim. The next largest would be Christians, Catholics, and Protestants. I think that's somewhere around 10%. There's Hindus, Bali being the biggest base of Hindus, and then pockets of Hinduism in Java and some other places. And I think there are, I don't know, Buddhism is a religion people declare here, but I'm not sure how many there are. But all the religions are here, and religion is incredibly important, regardless of whether it's Islam, Christianity, or so forth. Next thing that will be important is Indonesians' beliefs, traditional beliefs. So all these religions came from the outside here, right? And Indonesians have their own traditional beliefs that vary wildly. So, I mean, it could vary from island to island. It could vary from village to village in terms of beliefs, traditions, customs, and so forth. So these things are also, this is very important to Indonesians. So those two things, and the next things I would say are community and family. So maybe less so in the, sometimes in the cities, but more so in the countryside. Your local village and the people around you is very important, as well as your family. So when you think about that, you need to understand that all of those things come ahead of work, right? I think another misconception about Indonesians is that they're lazy, and that often if you're in a working situation with them, it's definitely not the same pace and the same flow as maybe working with someone from New York or working with someone with a higher sense of fast pace, I guess, because all these things come before, right? So if there's something going on in the village, whether it's a religious ceremony or a traditional ceremony, they're gonna skip work, you know what I mean? Or if there's something more important with the community or more something important with the family, it comes ahead of work. I think that's how you need to look at it. When Indonesians need to work, you meet people in the countryside that are working in rice farms that are 50, 60, 70 years old doing long days of manual labor, right? So when the work ethic needs to be there, they have it. But when one of these things that's more important to them comes up, then work takes a back seat. Education takes a back seat. The kids will skip school if there's something religious or cultural or family oriented. When you understand that, then you understand why something like work takes a back seat.
You want to see this tribe, yeah, you spent some time with them. What was the biggest revelations after spending time with them for you?
Yeah, the specific tribe I spent time with was the Mentawai tribe, which they live very, very primitively. I've also spent times with people that don't live as primitively, that come from more tribal roots but have progressed a little bit. But I've been in another region called Bajawa in Flores, where the people live in some traditional villages. They used to not have electricity. They have brought electricity in, but with out of bamboo wooden huts. And one thing unique about these places is that they believe in animism. So there's a lot of animal sacrifices that are tied into the culture. So, and I've witnessed this both in the Mentawais and in Flores. So usually the animals that are involved in this are chickens, pigs, and buffaloes. And depending on the type of ceremony would determine the scale. So for instance, in Flores, if you spend the night at a traditional home, which I've done, and this happens for anyone, they do a welcoming ceremony for you and they sacrifice a chicken, and then they will actually look inside the chicken at the organs and they'll make a reading for you based on what they see in the organs. In the Mentawais, I experienced this where they sacrificed a pig and they looked inside the pig and they looked at the organs, and then they made a reading for the tribe on whether they looked at the heart and made a reading whether they would have a good hunt or not in the coming months. In Flores, I've also experienced this on a larger scale. I went to a funeral where they sacrificed 18 pigs, and I went to a ceremony where they built a new home in a traditional village. It was a 2-day ceremony with thousands of people, and they sacrificed 30 plus pigs and 2 buffaloes. So initially, when you go into a place like this where it feels this primitive feel and maybe you have certain feelings towards animals, it can be quite shocking. Maybe you don't necessarily agree with it, but you have to learn that you have to have a little bit of understanding that although this is so foreign, that this is the way people live, right? One important thing to note is when they do this is that they use up all the animals and eat them right away. So for instance, when you spend the night in a traditional village in Bajawa, Flores, they sacrifice a chicken, they cook the chicken right away and you eat it completely. When I went to the home, they built a new home in Flores and there was 30 plus pigs and 2 buffaloes. There was almost 2,000 people there, and within 8 hours, they fed everybody with buffalo meat, pork, and rice. So going to a more tribal, primitive part of Indonesia like this, I think could be a bit shocking at just how foreign the culture is. And maybe you have conflicting views about it, but you just need to learn to be a little bit open and understanding that this is different than where you're from, and this is the way that people live, and this is the way that they've been doing things for a long time.
When you meet your Indonesian friends, first, what would be the right way to greet your Indonesian friends in a local way? To say hey, how you doing, bro? And maybe the handshake.
Yes. Indonesians have a lot of terms to address people. So generally, if you're speaking to a guy, the term is bang, and that's bro. It's kind of a Jakarta thing, but it is universal. And then it actually changes depending where you are. So if you're in Bali and you address a younger Balinese guy, it's beli. If you're in Java, East and Central Java, and you address a younger Javanese guy, it'd be mas. West Java is kang. North Sumatra and like with Batak, it's lay or lie. And there's a bunch of different, so it depends. So you kind of have to know, but bang is universal. So if I were seeing you, I'd say like, hello, bang, bang Max.
Yeah.
And then you usually touch your heart afterwards. Yeah. Which I'm not 100% sure on this. I've heard this could be a Muslim thing. But yeah, when you're meeting someone, you usually shake their hand or however you want to, if you dab them up or whatever, but then you touch your heart. So those are the terms for guys. If you're meeting younger women, it also depends. You could say ka or kaka. And there's usually younger women. In Java, sometimes you hear mba. So, and then it could change depending. And in Bali, it's mbo would be a younger woman or some. So yeah, it just changes. And then when you're also, if you greet older people, you have to show a bit of respect. Older man would be papa, or you could say pa. So hello pa, that's kind of like hi sir. And then ibu is an older woman. So you could say hello bu. Indonesians love shortening. So papa is pa, ibu is bu. And yeah, so usually and then if you're addressing a younger person, you usually say ade, or they short it for de. So there's all these there's kind of like a term for every stage of a person and if they're a guy or a girl. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. And then yeah, you say hello and then you say hello and apa kabar is like, how are you? Say, I'm good, healthy, and so forth.
Do you ask like, you makan already? Like, you eat already?
Sometimes, yeah, maybe sudah makan, belum makan gitu, something like that. Yeah, food is very important in Indonesia. People often ask that. Another big thing, especially if you're traveling, is they'll ask you, if you're going to someone's home or even meeting them out, they'll ask you for coffee. Kopi is very, very important part of Indonesian culture. So if you're meeting someone out, often you go to get coffee. If you're going to someone's home, they will welcome you in and then offer you coffee right away. Yeah, because most of Indonesia is Muslim and not many people drink. Coffee is the way people, is the starter for conversation and interaction. So coffee is very important.
When you meet your Indonesian friends, what would be the topics that you chat about compared to when you meet your American friends? If you ever thought about it this way?
In Bali, meeting my friends here, most of us have similar interests. So it's surfing. I like playing music, and I have a few friends that play music as well, so maybe we talk about that. Also, maybe the Indonesians that have moved to Bali are probably a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more in touch with the world, so you can talk a little bit about traveling and culture and so forth. So that definitely happens.
Politics?
Not
really?
Not so much. Maybe they'll crack a joke like, what do you think about Biden or Trump? Or they'll talk about Indonesia had an presidential election last year, but pretty surface level. They don't get too much into politics. Maybe with foreigners they won't. Maybe amongst themselves they would. In America, yeah, very different. So in America, the two things that I say a lot of conversations revolve around is first, Americans love winning. Americans are very competitive, as people know, and a lot of American culture revolves around your accomplishment and your success in your career. So I think that oftentimes comes up a lot in conversation. So if you meet somebody new, it's often, what do you do? And you're kind of assessing someone, how much have they succeeded? How much accomplishment do they have? So especially when you're meeting someone new, and I think if you would ask an American, like, what gives them confidence into meeting someone new, it would probably be like, what I've accomplished. Like, that's what I'm going to speak about. And then the second thing about conversating with Americans, which I kind of noticed recently, I've been away from America for 6 years now, and I usually go home for Christmas, and every time I kind of have a different takeaway and reflect about it. And this is something I noticed about conversating with Americans, but I never could really put a finger on it until I went home for Christmas this time, and my cousin has a Dutch fiance, and he's lived around the world, has a bit of a more European mindset for sure, and we had a conversation about this, and he basically told me, like, Americans, and this may be a New York thing, I think it applies to Americans in general, but definitely New York, is Americans conversate in stories and anecdotes, and that's mostly all they do. So as opposed to maybe if you were speaking with Europeans or even people in different parts of Asia, you'll probably talk about thoughts and ideas and how you feel about something. But often when you're in conversations with Americans, it's just story after story after story after story. And people often interrupt and you don't even get to finish your story. And then the way it works is, I don't think it's a one-upping mentality, it's a feeling of inclusiveness. So if you're in a group of 5 people and someone tells a story, you want to feel included and you want to fit in. So you're thinking in your head, do I have a story that relates to this, or do I have a story that's going to make someone laugh? And then you butt in and tell your story. So it just feels like, especially sometimes in New York, when you're conversating with Americans, a lot of it is around storytelling and anecdotes. To some degree, I love that. Like, I think Americans are some of the best storytellers. I think New Yorkers are some of the best, most animated, funny, engaging storytellers. And I find value in that, but it does get pretty tiresome. And I definitely appreciate a balance. You know, I want to talk about culture. I want to talk about ideas. I want to maybe touch on politics rather than a conversation being 90% stories and people interrupting each other.
What do you think you start understanding about yourself as an American after living abroad, specifically as an Indonesian?
I think the best analogy I've seen about America is that America is like a fishbowl where everyone can see in, but no one can see out. So obviously America is quite a self-centered place. That is due to the fact that we do have a lot of political influence. We do have a lot of influence in music and film and pop culture and so forth. So of course we get attention through those means, but people aren't very open-minded. And I think once you leave America, you definitely become more open-minded. I don't know if you felt this way, but I've had conversations with people from a variety of countries that I think when you initially leave your country, you definitely feel more negative towards it. So in the beginning, you're kind of in the honeymoon phase of the world and, oh, I hate my country, or I hate how they do this, or I hate how they do that. But then after a few years, you become a bit more balanced. Oh, I like this, or I don't like this. But yeah, definitely being away from America, now that I've been away for almost 6 years, has definitely taught me to be more considerate, think about the whole world and not just about the US, and be more open to different cultures and different ideas. As far as being in Indonesia, I think the most valuable thing for me, and maybe you feel like this too, is I think it's been a really unique experience when I'm in Bali, I live quite a mixed life. I have Indonesian friends and do Indonesian things, but I also have like Western friends and a balanced life. But when I'm traveling, which I've spent almost 3 years traveling around Indonesia, I'm fairly integrated into Indonesia, speaking Indonesian, only around Indonesia, not around any foreigners, so quite integrated. And I think when you get to integrate into a new country and really understand the culture, understand the people, understand the way people think and why they make certain decisions and why they act a certain way, when you understand kind of one culture specifically, it gives you a better understanding of culture in general. So now that I feel like because been quite integrated into Indonesia, maybe I see another part of the world or another country and I see the people doing or acting in some way that I don't necessarily understand, but I know there's probably a reasoning behind it, if that makes sense. So I think being in Indonesia and understanding, becoming integrated here has given me a more understanding and openness towards culture in general and how much it can vary.
What do you feel now when you go to the US? What's your thoughts and feelings about your home country?
I left the US and spent 3 months in Europe, and at that point I just fell in love with Europe and the mindset and the lifestyle. Even though I was traveling, you know, just interacting with Europeans, and I just thought, oh, America sucks. Like, why would I ever go back? And you definitely get that negative point of view right away. You're in the honeymoon phase, and then you come back to balance a little bit. So now I think when I go back, I just try to be honest about the things I like and the things I don't like. So as far as things in America that I like, I mean, I do appreciate American values such as work ethic, hustle, you know, putting yourself in a place that you want to be, and there's a lot of opportunity there and you can attain success if you work for it. I appreciate those values. Maybe some things that I don't like is I don't like the societal structure and kind of the treadmill that you're on with life. It's just, in the US you go to school, you go all the way through high school, and then you go straight to university, and then sometimes accumulating possibly a lot of debt, and then you sometimes go straight into grad school, and then you go straight into your career. And there's never a lot of time for self-exploration. One thing I like about Europe is a lot of the European countries have a gap year built into their system, oftentimes between high school and university. I've met so many Germans and French, Dutch, Scandinavians that were doing this, and I feel like it gives you a bit of time to figure things out. And in the US, people don't have that, and you're kind of in this rat race, and I don't think it's necessarily good to grow as a person and open up your mind. And yeah, as I mentioned about before, I don't like the closed-mindedness of Americans. I don't like the self-centeredness, not really having a good understanding of the world and understanding of different cultures and understanding of what's going on outside of our country. I definitely don't like that. And again, it's two-sided. As much as I respect the hustle and respect the work ethic and appreciate that, that's what I was brought up with, I don't like how your whole life revolves around that. And just so much of people's self-worth is there, what have you accomplished? In America, people live to work, you know, and I definitely appreciate a balance.